When was the last time you had a genuine conversation with someone you didn't know online in a video game? It feels as though for myself personally, it's been a very long time, which is strange considering for what felt like years, games were very much a social kind of experience. You go online, you meet and interact with folks you've never met before from all walks of life, and all share an experience for some time before you go on your separate ways. That description alone is the best angle for meeting people online in games. Most of the time, though, sadly, that's not how it goes. People are rude, brash, curt, and say things they normally wouldn't say if you were face to face with them. Online anonymity can be a powerful tool for some and the catalyst for a lot of people to behave how they normally wouldn't. And it's obvious game developers and companies have noticed this too. Maybe it's just me, but I feel as though a lot of games have removed or at the very least made it really difficult to simply speak with someone else if they aren't in a party with you or in Discord or another app. The traditional methods of communication in games are slowly being removed and being replaced with more crude methods that, while in theory can work just fine, but when actually implemented either don't work at all or backfire spectacularly because companies don't actually know what gamers want and how they interact with each other online. Regular voice chat that is just on and you can talk and make calls with your team feels as though it's a thing of the past for new games. What happens now is being hot mic'd when you die so your assailant can hear you for maybe a second or two before it cuts out. The one counter I will concede though is the embracement of VoIP, something becoming more popular in some online games. I suppose there's an argument to be made that it's kind of becoming the middle ground between full voice chat in games and no communication at all. And while it's certainly useful and entertaining and can create really funny moments, I still feel as though it isn't the same as just regular voice chat in a pre-game lobby where you can chat with both your team and the enemy team at the same time. Text chat is also something that still remains, and while it can facilitate its role just fine in regards to making calls in the game with your team, trying to actually talk to someone is a struggle because you lose so much context and emphasis with just text only. It makes sense why some people much prefer to talk on the phone than to chat with text messages. You lose a layer of communication, and something can be misconstrued for a completely different meaning through text versus voice. Plus, we've seen games try and censor the naughty words and have it blow back in their face by getting rid of words that aren't offensive at all. Even text chat can be faulty and shoddy when not handled correctly. So, if companies try to remove or restrict our ability to talk in games, they usually try to give us something to work with as a side. And most of the time, it's in the form of in-game prompts / messages or emotes that can be used to interact with other players. In-game prompts and messages are something else entirely, and what I'm referring to here specifically are either in-game pings or a select few options of responses when someone tries to relay any kind of information to you. A fantastic example of this is For Honor, and how you only had 4 options for quick in-game messages to try and work with your team. They were sorry, good fight, thanks, and I think everyone's personal favorite, wow. And this last one is the antithesis of everything wrong with games removing methods of communication to other players. My guess here, what started in the office as maybe a way of telling someone you fought that they did a good job, or perhaps they used a trick that you weren't expecting, very quickly devolved into a way of spewing salt across all of For Honor. When someone would die and was not happy with the result, you better be ready to see 3 of those wows pop up immediately on the enemy team. For the mandatory wait before you can send another message out, restricting your communication even more. It was the fastest way to relay to someone in-game that you were salty and tilted. Usually some form of a player disconnect occurred afterwards, but other times it would just be wow spam for the entire game. But this brings up the question of, how did something that was supposed to be used for in-game communication to your team turn into something that lets another person know you're upset with them and how they play the game? I don't really have any science that I can use to back up these kinds of ideas, nor do I think any real research has been done on something trivial like this, but at least from speaking from personal experience, a lot of the time, those silly in-game emotes, voice lines, and quips are used exactly the opposite way the developers intended them to be used. I guarantee that people who create these ideas have the best intentions for their players, a way to talk to your team without actually talking to them. What could go wrong? Well, everything. League is another example of this. Years ago, when they introduced the level 4 and 5 mastery emotes for champions, they must have thought it would have been used as a badge of honor to show off to others. I can't find the exact words in the patch notes online, even their official website history only goes back 2 years for patch notes, and I was hoping to quote them directly, but I can't. However, what I can tell you is that the good intentions ended up creating the exact opposite thing for players. You style on somebody, you flash your emote. You tilt someone in lane, you flash the emote. You want to be annoying in ARAM, you flash the stupid emote. Luckily, there is a way to turn it off, but my god did those things get obnoxious after 30 seconds of hearing them. Not to mention, people could attach them to a macro or keybind, so when they used a certain ability, it would flash the emote. And once they added level 6 and 7 emotes, it kinda got worse. Basically, no game that implements these kinds of pseudo-interactive emotes ever really goes akin to what the developers want. Now, to be fair, these kinds of additions to games really get abused shortly after the release, and once people have their fun and maybe troll others with it, the magic kind of wears off, people know what to expect, the spam of these features kind of goes away. But I doubt the devs intended these features to be used the way they were using them in the first place. Maybe Street Fighter 6 will be a good example, and the Battle Hub will change that because it's strictly a social room to hang out with others and spend time doing the thing you all want to do, which is fight people, but who knows. Game companies for a while now have been trying to neuter our ability to communicate with one another through normal, traditional speaking, while also adding their own versions of ideas to not completely remove all discourse while in a game. It's a large game of give and take, where the developers decide both the give and the take aspects of this delicate balance. And while having more options always has had a better track record than limiting what players can do within a game, it still hasn't stopped devs from trying to make the context of their online interactions more ambiguous than ever before. And again, a lot of the times these decisions don't come from a place of malice. They just want an environment where everyone can play and enjoy themselves. However, by focusing so much on this mindset, they sometimes pigeonhole themselves into corners where they need to make features that are half thought out and end up becoming problem points down the line when tons of people get their hands on them. Either way, I hope companies begin to realize how important context in video games or even just online communication is. By removing methods of talking, you remove our ability to be ourselves and what we'd like to say across to many other people who have their own stories to tell as well. Thank you very much for taking the time out of your day to watch this video, and if you have your own story to tell or you just want to say hello, be sure to leave a comment down below and like and subscribe for more videos about the things we find interesting about video games. I hope to see you in future ones.